Implacable dry heat, interrupted by waves of Lolu, is the essence of sauna. Michael Nordskog, The Opposite of Cold. Just a heads up, we had an audio error and only one microphone was recording, so our audio for this episode is poor quality. We apologize in advance.
Hi, this is Risto, and welcome back to the Sauna Trail podcast. Join us in our adventures as we share the story of how our family discovered the world of Finnish sauna. You might be wondering, why would anyone do a podcast dedicated to something as commonplace as sauna? It's like doing a podcast about podcasts, rain, or salt. Well, if you stick around, you might find out that there's more to sauna than you realized. Last week, we traveled further than we'd ever traveled before to a sauna in Pennsylvania. We talked about the smallest mobile sauna we've ever seen, and we attended a concert from our favorite band, The Innocence Mission. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode or the band, we highly recommend that you do so. Today's episode focuses on how to use sauna. So we'll be talking about how Finnish people use sauna. It's a little bit different than how Americans use it. Actually, it's quite a bit different. And then specifically how our family saunas. Because we're not Finnish American, so we kind of had to learn along the way. Before we start talking about how we sauna, I think a really important question that people don't think about often is why you sauna. Because the why that you do something really affects how we do it. So why do you guys sauna, and why do Finnish people sauna?
I sauna because it's super relaxing, and going from the hot to cold is like, I'm really hot, and you go into the cold and it's like, ah. And then, you shower off, spray off, and then go into a cold plunge. It's basically like cleaning yourself, right? Finnish people, it's their bath. And they use soap, but I don't usually use soap.
Have you ever?
Not that I remember.
When you were really little, I would make you guys soak down. But we haven't done that in a while, I don't think.
Yeah, I sauna mostly because I like how clean it makes me feel, which is kind of what Daniel was saying. The Finnish people use it as a bath. But it gets me I feel much cleaner than I would just taking a shower.
Yeah, because you're kind of cleaning from the inside out. Like a bathtub is nice and relaxing. It's like a little hot tub, but you're just bathing in all of your own filth. Oh. And then in the shower, it's good because it's rinsing it off, but you're just basically getting kind of that top layer of your skin cleaned off. But in a sauna, you're actually cleaning from the inside out. You're sweating out a bunch of stuff and really cleaning off the skin. And that's why you sauna.
I mostly sauna because it's, like Daniel said, it's really nice from going to hot to cold to hot. And it's just very satisfying for me. And especially when you go into Lake Superior. That's my favorite. But yeah, it's just mostly hot to cold.
So when you're going into Lake Superior, that's kind of the sauna there. The why is to heat up from the cold of the water, how cold you get being in Lake Superior.
Yeah, I enjoy sauning. I enjoy the challenge of just like sitting in the hot and then going to really cold. For me, I really enjoy that physical challenge. I also think it's one of the ways that I can relax, and it's unique, and it takes so long to prepare, to do well, and then to sit in the sauna and be doing nothing, maybe talking with someone else, and then to sit outside and in nature and just relax. And then afterwards having maybe some food, taking a nap. So it's a very long process that feels super great afterwards and is really relaxing and very unique in that.
And I think you touched on a lot of the things that I sauna for relaxing. You know, it's hard to in 200-degree heat to have your brain going and thinking about this thing that you have to do or this thing or be worried about that thing. And so it forces my brain to stop and just be in the moment, to be in the heat, to smell the essential oils, to hear the fire crackling, to feel the heat, the steam. And it just ends up being very sensory and not like stressful, anxiety driven. Because I feel like that's kind of how our society is. It's so like high energy. And there's very few times in my day where I have that quiet, where I'm just focused on the physical aspects of life and not everything else. So I like the quiet of the sauna, but I also enjoy talking with people in the sauna. I think it's just a really good place to have deep conversations that we don't always have outside of sauna. So those are my main things: relaxation and then communication and conversation with people.
Yeah, because it's in our society these days, it's how many activities are there where people just sit around and do nothing but just talk with each other. I guess maybe like a bonfire or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Or not even talk with each other.
Yeah, because everybody's got their phone. There's no phones in the sauna. It'll melt. So
Well, and one note on people talking, like, I don't love having conversations as much during sauna, but I like listening to all the conversations going on. So I'll sit on the lower level of the sauna, wrapped in a towel, and just eavesdrop.
yeah, I do too. I think I realized that this last weekend when we were sauning with some friends, and I realized that like he just talked most of the time, and that was okay. And I just sat and I just listened, and it was nice to not have to feel like I had to be a part of the conversation, but I was still part of a conversation. It's weird.
I just buy earplugs.
Yeah, and so for us, just to kind of sum all those things up, what I hear from you guys is community, cleanliness, and then it also puts your mind and body in kind of a physically intense situation, provides a kind of a reset that ends up being super relaxing. And then what do you guys know of the Finnish cultural practices or historical reasons for why they might sauna or use how they might use their sauna?
Well, like Daniel said, it was a bath for them. Um, Also, if you're trying to have conversations, deep conversations or difficult conversations, it lends itself to that.
Yeah, tons of water, soap, washcloths, more water. Yeah, they have a lot of water in their saunas.
Well, and it's a sanitary place. So, I mean, if you're living like out in the middle of nowhere and there's no hospital, like they would give birth in the sauna, prepare the body after someone died because it was a clean place, probably cleaner than the inside of the house. So, because it got really, really hot.
Yeah, I've heard, I haven't confirmed this, but the interior, the air temperature, once you getting over like 150, I've heard that it's killing bacteria, at least if it's exposed for a long time at that temperature. Those hotter temperatures make it cleaner inside.
And when you think of an old sauna, you think of like pink curtains, big pink tubs of like just plastic tubs for water, pans and stuff.
Yeah, and I think they would also malt barley in the sauna, and then back in the old smoke saunas, smoke meats, ham, and probably cook foods and things. It was a multi-purpose building for them.
Dry clothes.
Yep, I think I've read of stories of them, people doing dishes, heating water for laundry, things like that. Yep.
Yeah, I've read stories of when the guys would come home from the lumber camps, they would go to the sauna first to get rid of all the lice so they didn't get into the house.
Yep.
And I think in Finland, maybe in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the washing part became separated from the hot room, and a lot of saunas there, not all of them, but in a lot of saunas, then there'd be a shower next to the sauna. But here in North America, in Finnish American communities, especially like in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or in Minnesota, the washing practice is still very much part of that, even in the hot room, with there being showers in the hot room and soap and shampoo.
And a water pump in the hot room.
So those are kind of some of the motivations for why people might sauna. I'm sure we've forgotten some, but let's get into how we sauna and how Finnish people sauna, get into some of those details.
So before we actually even get the sauna hot to sauna, we actually prepare kind of a few days even ahead of time. So one of the things that we always tell people, like a few days before you come over, start hydrating and making sure that you're drinking enough water, because you do sweat a lot. So you don't want to be dehydrated going into a sauna, because it will continue to dehydrate you even more. So that is something that we do before even the day of.
Yeah, because I think it takes a while. You'll have to correct me, you being the nurse, or not correct or confirm, but I think it takes a while for your body to really get hydrated. A lot of people want to hydrate 10 minutes before the sauna, and I don't think your body has enough time for the water to kind of get everywhere and into your cells. I remember reading in a book, I think it was With Light Steam by Brian McWilliams, about a Russian lady who would hydrate a few days ahead of time.
Yeah, I think even like, when you have a cold or something or a fever, you do tend to get dehydrated. And so I think recovering from a cold, part of that is it takes a few days. Part of that is just your body is rehydrating itself into the cells. Yeah. Another thing that we do, or we try to do, we're not as good about this. I mean, and I shouldn't say we, it's mostly Christopher and the kids that do this, is they will actually prepare buckets. And boys, you can explain what goes in the buckets for starting the fire.
Well, we usually put smaller pieces of wood, some paper bags or paper, birch bark, and matches.
Like a box of matches.
Yeah.
And what do we use to get those smaller pieces of wood?
We usually use a kindling cracker to split the wood, and if the wood's too long to go in our stove, we saw it in half.
Oh yeah, something.
Yeah, so the preparation for our sauna, since it's wood burning, is several days and even weeks ahead of time, of making sure our wood pile is relatively broken down so that we're ready to go.
Is there any particular type of wood that we burn more of?
Usually we burn oak, right?
Yeah. Mostly these days it's ash and oak, but in the past we burned birch.
And I really like the smell of birch bark. It smells just lovely when it burns.
So let's talk about actually starting that fire and to get into some of those details. And the boys in our family have mostly done this, although Julie was the original fire tender.
The OG.
But what are some of your guidelines or recommendations? How do you start and tend a sauna fire, and how long does it take before the sauna is ready to use?
So to start the fire, we put in wood, long wood, one way into the stove. And then the second layer, you switch the direction, and then you kind of create alternating layers, direction of wood. Make sure you have enough air and a lot more paper. When I first started sound fires, I did not do enough paper. And then birch bark.
And how big of pieces of wood are you filling the stove with initially?
Smaller pieces, probably about 2 inches in diameter, but it varies.
And what's special about birch bark?
It burns for a really long time. Like paper, it just burns up, but birch bark, it just doesn't stop burning. Slow burn. Well, I mean, eventually it stops burning.
So when you've got it started, you don't want to go straight to big ones. you're gonna go to medium ones, which are about 4 inches in diameter, and you don't need to put them in right away as you start it. You might want to wait for it a little bit for it to burn a little bit, so then you get more of coals, and then you're gonna put the medium ones in. You don't want to put too many of them. And then maybe once you're about halfway to heating, then you'll want to start putting like medium big sizes. And usually the sauna will heat about an hour and a half. But like if it's in winter, it might take like 2 hours or 2 hours 15 minutes. In summer, it could take like an hour. So it just like the outside temperature affects it a lot too.
Yeah, we have a pretty large sauna with a large volume.
Yeah, and log saunas, like those bigger ones, it might take a little bit longer too.
So now to know when your sauna is ready. You can use air temp, and for our sauna, 190, 200, 180, around that range we like it. But that's not the only way. You also should feel the benches and walls. If they're not very warm at all, then you probably need to heat it a little longer. But if they're warm, then you're good to go. The rocks should also be pretty hot, so if you're throwing on water and it takes a while to burn the water off, your rocks probably aren't hot enough. But if it burns off pretty quickly, you're ready.
So when you say when the water burns off, what do you mean by the water burns off? Before up the rocks.
Turns into steam.
Okay, so if it turns into steam quickly, then you know your rocks are hot.
Yeah.
And why isn't it important that the benches and walls are warm or hot?
So your sauna keeps the hot air in.
Yeah, so if your benches and walls are cold, it's like you don't want to be getting to a cold sauna. And it's just like sometimes like you can tell if the sauna is warm by the outside. You can feel the walls on the outside and it'll be warm, or like you can feel it. And it's just make sure like you're actually warm. You're not just on the air's warm, but then like nothing else is warm, so it's gonna be still cold and still heating up, so you're gonna have sharp heat still.
Yeah. And there's kind of that difference in type of heat that we talk about. I like to describe that as you're going for an intense heat, but it's still kind of soft and gentle and surrounding. And you get that heat that's surrounding you and radiating a little bit from the walls and the benches and kind of everywhere. And it makes for kind of an even heat when the whole building or room is warm. So a lot goes into preparing and heating our sauna because it's a wood burner. And that process can be actually pretty enjoyable. Who doesn't like to start a fire and tend it? But it's some electric saunas, they're a lot easier. You just flip a switch and you're ready to go in an hour or 45 minutes. But it's still the same for an electric sauna where the air is going to be hotter before the walls and benches are warm or before the rocks are really hot.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything worse than putting steam on the rocks and it just goes like instead of like
Exactly.
It's like kind of bubbling on the rocks, and it's just like, what is the point?
Yeah. Yeah, we always make a joke. We always say the rocks are dying. When we hear that, we know it's time to get that stove lit back up.
And then what other kind of preparations are we doing while the stove is heating during that hour?
One thing we'll do while the sauna is heating is fill up our buckets of water. We have a couple metal buckets that we fill up for using for steam in the sauna or water in the sauna.
yeah, when you're sauning, you don't want to be like, oh, do we have clean towels? Oh, do we have buckets of water? You want everything to be set up. So it kind of goes without saying, we have to make sure we have clean towels, we fill up buckets of water, we pull out our flip-flops and sauna hats.
Yeah, it should be a time for relaxing. So you're right. You don't want to have to be trying to figure things out while you're sauning.
We also fill our cold plunges and pull out chairs. And usually we fill up a water bottle so we have water while we're sauning. So we're not like parched.
We also sometimes sweep out the sauna beforehand.
We don't have a dog, but there was a time when our sauna was in someone else's yard and they had a dog. So picking up the dog poop in the yard before you sauna is important. Otherwise, you'll be stepping on dog poop and maybe your bare feet.
Yeah, and I'll usually get the towels and sauna hats and robes all out in the sauna and ready. And then sometimes I'll prepare some essential oils, just dilute them in a bottle with some water so that we can put those on the rocks. And we rarely use a vita, which a vita is a bunch of branches, small branches from a tree that are bundled up together to exfoliate and kind of massage. And they also provide a nice smell, but that would be the time to be preparing your vita as well.
We usually don't soap up in our sauna. I think it's a little bit harder because we're wearing suits because we're in the city. We're not like on the lake by ourselves. So washing up is not a habitual thing that we do. But I know the last few times I actually did wash down in the sauna. So I did have soap and the little exfoliating mitt that my sister-in-law gave me. And I think I have forgotten how much cleaner I feel when I wash up in the sauna. Like it's clean. I'm clean otherwise when I'm wearing a suit, but there's just something, there's like a whole nother level of cleanliness with soap and then you got the water that's kind of in the sauna, so it's kind of warm. It's not cold, it's warm, and I've forgotten how nice that is.
Yeah, when I sauned with Randy Leppa a couple weeks ago, he washed down in the final round, and so then I followed suit. I figured I could learn from him.
Yeah, in our sauna, because we live in the city and we have to wear suits, I don't wash down, but when I come inside, I usually take a shower and then I use soap. And then I soap up and just wash away any sweat that did come off when I rinsed off the final time.
So let's give people kind of an idea what it's like in the sauna. Let's say it's up to temp. So not just the air temperature, but the walls and the benches are hot and the rocks you put the water on and it's real quick, nice and hot, ready to go to make steam. What do we do then? What are the next steps? And then what is it like in the hot room? Let's give people an idea of what the rounds are like and the flow of things.
Well, another thing we do before we start sauning is Daddy usually does this. He brings in a long hose with a spray head and he sprays down the walls. Or he uses a ladle with the sauna bucket's water. And that's to humidify the room so it's not so dry and harsh, stinging heat when you come in.
Yeah, I usually do that a few minutes before we start salivating. And I want to give it a few minutes for that humidity to come up and then just settle down just a little bit. And then the atmosphere is like perfect. Most public saunas, people aren't making steam at all. And they've just been sitting there heating all day. And it's just crazy dry, harsh, and unpleasant in those saunas.
And I can tell the difference because it's almost like burning in your nose. Like when it's too dry and it's hot, there's like this burning sensation when you breathe in. But as soon as the walls are humid are spraying down and it's a little bit more humidity in the air, like it's so much more pleasant. So I think spraying it down has been pretty nice addition to our habits.
Well, we'll head out to the sauna when it's ready, and the smarter ones among us will rinse down and maybe the cold plunge before we go in. That way your hair is wet and the heat feels nicer than when you go straight in and you're all dry and it's unpleasant. And then we take off our flip-flops, put down our towels, climb up to the top bench. And one of the first things we do is put steam on, especially if we haven't sprayed down the walls already. So the air is a little more humid.
Yeah, and I really like a steamy sauna. So does Daddy. And Uncle Greg. And Nala.
And Uncle Dan.
Uncle Dan. A lot of people like a steamy sauna, actually. So I will always do lots of steam the first round, especially if I've cold plunged beforehand. Get it really, really hot and humid.
So when you say lots of steam, what does that mean?
Probably a couple ladlefuls in the beginning, then sit for a little bit, and maybe a couple minutes, and then another ladle of steam. I don't really keep track of it. It's just when the air feels when the windows are fogged and the air feels really humid.
Then you know you have enough steam.
I will say, I think when we have guests over, Becca is more nice to them, so she won't put as much steam, but I will still steam because I like it. But I don't put as much steam as I want to because I get a little paranoid about flooding the stove, which Becca and I did once. We were trying to steam Daniel out and we flooded the stove. You were out of the town and then we realized the stove was flooded. But yeah, Becca is nice with people about steam.
It depends on the guest.
If you're in the hot room, just say for 10 minutes, we don't ever time it. We just listen to our bodies. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but as far as what that is to listen to your body. But if you're in the hot room for 10 minutes, are you doing 3 ladles of water or is it more?
Probably more. Probably closer to like 5.
Especially if somebody's talking a lot.
Hudson's over there with his earplugs still steaming everybody out.
Yeah, sometimes the intensity of steam is a good way to quiet the conversation in the sauna. Is there anything else you guys do during a sauna round in the heat?
I don't do this, and I don't particularly like it. But Daddy will make me stand in the center, and he'll throw tons of steam on, and then he'll grab a towel and wave it around on the top, and it'll make the heat a lot more hot. And I don't like it, but
the rest of us like it.
yeah. Yeah, it brings the steam down a little bit.
You know, if it gets too hot or too dry, I'll get a ladle full of water and throw it on myself, on my hair, on my face, shoulders, legs, arms. And I'll do that several times throughout the round.
Yeah, I think we learned that from Steve Codula when we sounded with him. He used a lot of water in his sauna. He just had the small kind of pots, like the camping pots, and we each had our own bucket of water.
More than one.
Yeah. And then you could just keep pouring that water on. And it's nice. It cools you off just a little bit, kind of regulates the heat, but it also washes off all that sweat.
That's another way to shut somebody up. They're talking, splash them.
Well, that brings us around to like being a sauna clown. We do have a few kind of like rules. And I think we saw the sauna clown thing in a YouTube video where I think the dad or the grandpa was heating up and he was saying about don't be a sauna clown. And that's kind of just stuck with us. So we have a few just basic rules. Like the first one is no lighting. And the second rule is
Shut the door.
do we have more rules than that other than just don't be a sauna clown?
Don't fart.
Oh yeah, no farting in the sauna.
You can go outside, but yeah. No being crazy, yelling.
Yeah, stay fairly chill. But we don't force silence. We can still have a good time in there.
Yeah.
I think it was more, especially when you guys were younger, we just didn't want you to be like rambunctious, like being crazy. You know, it was just kind of like calm down, chill out.
No jumping on the top bench and bonk your head on the ceiling.
Yeah.
I think part of that horsing around in the sauna is part of who's in the sauna with you. So if it's adults who are in there to relax and they're chilling out, you need to be chill. But if it's a bunch of kids, obviously you don't want to be super crazy. But we do splash each other with water and various other things.
So let's say you're getting towards the end of your first round. How do you know when you're ready to leave?
When I feel really hot and I want to leave, then I put a little bit of cold water on me and sit in there. Maybe another ladle of steam. And then if I really want to get really hot, I'll do that again. Otherwise, I'll just leave after that steam, stay in longer than you might think.
Yeah, it's a pretty common phrase you hear in the sauna world is listen to your body. And that is true, but I recently had a conversation with Marcus Ratti from up in Canada, and he said that he recommends people don't listen to their body, at least in a sense. And we agree with him. It's you do want to listen to your body. If you're feeling sick or really, really bad, you should get out and get cool. But when you're uncomfortable, it is good to push beyond that some.
Yeah, I kind of equate it to like working out. Like when you're working out or going for a run, like you are going to feel stress. Your body is going to be stressed and you're going to short of breath and your muscles might start hurting. But you push yourself a little bit further, not hurt yourself, but it's the same thing in the sauna. Like you want to listen to your body and you want to know what your limits are, but it's also okay to push those limits a little bit.
Well, and there's a difference between being like listening to your body, like as soon as you feel something acting on that, versus understanding, okay, this is how I feel. And like, if you're feeling like really, really dizzy or really, really sick, obviously that's a signal you need to cool down. But like, there are times where I walk into the sauna, like at the very beginning, and oh my goodness, it's so hot in here. But I don't think to myself I should get out just because I feel really, really hot. I like to, once I sweat for a bit, and sometimes when the conversation's getting to the point where I can't keep up with what other people are saying, then I'll be like, okay, time to pop out for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I usually leave when I start getting kind of dizzy and it's a little hard to breathe. Then I'll leave.
I don't think I push it that far. I'm not dizzy.
But that happens to me even when I know I'm not hot enough. I get kind of dizzy, so I have to decide when it's too dizzy.
Yeah, and one good reason not to time it. Yeah, I know it's very popular. You see in a lot of sauna these sand timers. One good reason not to use that is because you aren't paying attention to those physical cues, just looking at the clock. I mean, it might be a nice way to tell how long you've been in there if you want to keep track of that. But depending on each day, your physiology could change, how much sleep you got. You may not be able to take as much heat. If you're maybe getting sick, that also could affect it. And then how many times you sauna and your body's gotten used to being in the heat, it will change how long you are in the sauna. So I don't know that we've ever timed a sauna round. Maybe once in the 8 years that we've been sauning.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't remember ever doing that.
Yeah, I have no idea how long you stay in the hot room.
Yeah, people always ask me and I go, not a clue. I don't know. The whole thing's done in like 3 hours. That's all I know.
So after we're done with the 13.7 minutes in our first room, then what do you guys do?
Well, first round, it depends person to person. Everyone sprays off. Some people cold plunge after the first round. Some people prefer to wait because after that first round, you may not have gotten hot like all the way to your core. So the cold plunge can just be too cold that first round. And then you go sit out in chairs. If you've cold plunged, you don't sit out as long. If you haven't cold plunged, maybe that first round you spend quite a bit of time outside cooling down. What I usually do is I pre-plunge before I go in for the first round. And then after every round, I rinse off to get all the sweat off so the cold plunges aren't disgusting. And then I cold plunge after every round. And then I sit out until I feel pretty cold. And then I usually cold plunge again because by the time I'm cold, all the water has like dripped off. And I don't want to be dry when I go in the sauna. So I cold plunge quickly again and I go back in.
That's one like thing for Lake Superior. You don't have to hose off. You can just go right in and then just like it's like right out. It's like you don't have to worry about rinsing off.
Yeah, Lake Superior is the best cold plunge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point about cold plunging twice. Unless it's like winter, snow on the ground, freezing outside.
you kind of warm up after getting out the cold plunge. So then I cold plunge again before I go on the sound.
Well, to cheat, you could put a chair in Lake Superior, so then you just stay cold the whole time. We gotta try that next time we go.
And why not rush back in?
It's the same reason you push yourself a little bit in the heat, is you want to get your core to completely cool down. Because when you go in cold plunge, you're immediately, all the outside of you is very cold and freezing, and you immediately want to get back in the heat. But in my experience, like if you do that, you're going to heat up super fast because the inside of you is still warm from the first round. So you need to make sure that you completely cool off, even to your like core.
Yeah, otherwise you're gonna go out, cold plunge, go in, and in 10 seconds you're gonna want to go out again.
And it's not very relaxing. I do really enjoy the relaxation outside after a cold plunge. We have zero gravity chairs, which are chairs that lean way back. And so just leaning back from one of those chairs, and if it's sunny and laying in the sun after the cold plunge, it's super relaxing. And if you're constantly going in and out, you just miss the relaxation.
Now, don't let the title fool you. It's not zero gravity, so you're just still gonna fall down, but
Yeah. And people think of sauna as just the time in the hot, but it's also the time in the cold plunge and this time outside of the sauna, depending on what the weather is. Most of your time could be outside of the hot room. And that is very enjoyable time. You've gone through the hot to the cold, and your body might be releasing all these sauna high chemicals, and you might be getting spins or just feeling really great. So you can have good conversation or good, quiet, relaxing time. To be honest, most people, if they've had a good cold plunge in hot, some of the quietest times actually outside the sauna when we're sitting just in the yard.
Yeah, I find that if I got nice and hot and the coldest water is really nice and cold, I do get a little bit spinny, and it's hard for me to like complete a sentence. So I just a lot of times will just sit in the chairs and the quiet because I can't really hold a conversation at that point.
people think you're having a stroke.
Well, no, not that bad, but
But you do have to be careful because I have had some times where I had an acute rise in blood pressure after the cold plunge. So now I kind of take the cold plunge a little easy. Again, comes back to listening to your body and knowing where you can push it and where you shouldn't push it.
Yeah, after I cold plunge, if the weather is cold, I will sit out there longer instead of going back in because then I get colder and I know it's going to be more satisfying when I go into the heat.
That's very true. That's another good point. I didn't even think of that. You feel even better when you come into the warmth after coming from the cold. It just feels so much better in the hot room.
Yeah.
and sometimes when you go into the hot room, you're like, I'm like, oh, it doesn't even feel hot in here. Did the temperature drop? And then we'll look at the thermometer and it's like still like 190 degrees. But because you're so cold, that 190 degrees feels like 100.
You have an ice shield around you.
Yeah.
Well, and if you spend time sitting outside, that will be one of the few times in your life when you'll be sitting outside and there will be steam coming off you.
Yeah.
So we haven't rushed back into the hot room, but now you're ready, nice and cool down, and you go back in and then basically repeat that process. Is there anything notable about that second time as you're repeating the cycle?
Usually when I sauna with friends or Nala, that second round tends to be a lot more chill than the first round. So I like to lay out on the bench, lay a towel down under my head, and just throw some steam, maybe not as much of the second round, and just relax.
Yeah, we completely forgot to mention that we put towels down on the bench. Or at least I do, because otherwise I like burn my bum.
I think I like more steam the second round. And I think it's because you're cold and then having that steam just really drives the heat into you. And so I think when I first come in that second round, I really like to put on quite a bit of water to get the steam.
Yeah, the second round, maybe less people in the hot room, less people outside, because now people are on different sauna schedules. So some people will be outside, some people will be inside, and people will be alternating by then.
Yeah, and not every sauna round looks the same as you're talking about laying out. So that's a good thing for people to know is it's not always exactly the same, but there are kind of some similarities. So then how many rounds do we normally do?
I usually do shorter than most of you. I probably do 3 rounds if I'm feeling good at 4. Very rarely I do 2.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the person because some people in our family will go forever, and I really will only go 2 or 3 rounds. If it's a good sauna, I'll go like 5 or 6. So
Yeah, so it's anywhere in that 2 to 5 realm with kind of averaging 3 or 4, unless we're on vacation in the UP next to Lake Superior, and then Julie's doing 13 rounds.
All day.
yeah,
Yeah, in that 3 to 5 realm, I find that round 3 or maybe round 4, every now and again, I'll do a round where I just want a mega amount of steam. And it's usually a few rounds in. And then, say, round 3, round 4, I just want to keep just slowly adding steam and just keep adding it and adding it and adding it. And this what I describe as a lava blanket just kind of comes over you.
And sometimes for me, my last round, I don't do a lot of steam. I don't really push myself to really sweat that last round. And I'll maybe rinse off, but I won't necessarily cold plunge. And then I usually come in. So that last round for me is a little bit less intense.
Yeah, for me, when I'm ready to wrap up, let's say I did 3 rounds and I come out, I cold plunge, I'm cold. Then I'll go into the sauna for like a minute, 2 minutes, just warm up slightly so I'm not freezing or I'm not sweating when I go inside.
Yeah, because you want to make sure that you cool down enough, and if you got air drying is like the best to let your body just come back down to regular temperature.
Yeah, I've made the mistake of coming in after a really hot sauna round and being done and putting on like a warm sweater or something, and it just does not feel good. It feels like you almost have a fever. So making sure that you get back to that normal body temp is good.
or you go to bed like that, and you're like, ah.
Yeah, so then it's important to rehydrate and get really cool because your body needs to reset its thermostat because your thermostat can kind of get wonky after going back and forth in the sauna. And then what else do we do after sauna usually?
Eat.
Yeah, I enjoy a good cup of tea and some food.
Yeah, pretty much anything that has salt.
Sausage and potatoes and rice and mustard is very good. And pickles.
Cold crepes.
Or if we're in the UP, we got our hands on some smoked fish and some thinly sliced raw white onion on crackers.
Pasties.
Oh yeah, pasties.
Basically anything after sauna tastes good.
What wouldn't taste? Pizza? Pizza doesn't sound very good after sauna.
I eat pizza. I think like cake.
Like sweet stuff is not gonna be great. Like grapes are fine, but they're not like super sweet.
Well, I think we had pineapple in between rounds at UKTS. That was pretty good. Yeah, the food is a really important part. People tend to think again only of the hot room, but all of these elements are just part of the whole sauna experience. Food is as much important as the hot room, and hosting people and having good conversations is as important as the steam.
Yeah, and then hot apple cider after sauna is good. Or cold sparkling juices.
So, when is your favorite season to sauna and why?
I like winter. It's cold and it's easier to cool off. Same.
I don't like winter as much because of the snow. Like when I step in the snow with my flip flops, my feet like freeze. I like fall. It's cold, no snow. It's not hot either.
I bounce between fall or summer. Generally, I like fall better because the cold plunges can get much colder than in the summer. Summer we have to get bags of ice, and those melt quickly depending on the day. But I enjoy the sunshine of the summertime, and there not being any mud.
My favorite is probably late fall, early winter. That's probably my favorite word. It's cold, but it can still get water out of the faucet and have good cold plunges.
Spring is one of the worst because it's like muddy and it's like half warm, some snow on the ground. It's terrible.
Well, it's not terrible.
Yeah, I think every season has its own unique benefits for sauna. There's not any season that's not good for sauna. Probably fall and summer are my favorite. Especially I can think of like a summer day up in the UP where you're going in and out of Lake Superior and you have the sun and picking some fresh berries between rounds, that kind of thing.
Summer day in the UP can be risky. All those horse flies. They get eaten alive.
Yeah, I remember you had to go underwater to avoid them.
One thing I would just like to say, I don't prefer sauning in the evening.
Why is that?
I don't know. I don't like the darkness, and I don't know. I just can't relax as much.
See, the thing is, I think that depends on the person because I'm the exact opposite. I really, really enjoy sauna only at evening, preferably when it's dark, and that's when I can relax the most. And also stay in the hot room longer. Yeah, I prefer the evening. I can sauna afternoon, evening, but I prefer evening. It's just more like relaxing.
I honestly could sauna any time of the day. It probably depends more on like how I slept the night before.
Here's Becca at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I'm probably with you, Becca. I think I could sauna any time of the day.
And so, just quickly to start wrapping up, what would you recommend to new people that are coming to sauna? What couple things would you say that they would need to know before they take their first sauna?
I would say it's super, super important that you learn how to relax into the hot and into the cold. That was one mistake I made very early on is when we were trying new saunas, I was nervous and I just couldn't relax and enjoy the experience. And so it ended up just being super hot and then super cold. And there wasn't any enjoyment in there for me.
Yeah, the people kind of like me. Like, if I wasn't introduced to sauna super young, I don't think I would like it. Just to know, like, no one's judging you in the sauna. So, like Becca said, relaxing is really going to make the experience much, much better.
Go your own pace, but push yourself just a little bit. And remember, very importantly, to relax. Don't time yourself. Well, I mean, you can time yourself, but don't like try and push yourself like I want to hit 15 minutes. You gotta relax. It's a bath. You're not competing.
You're not timing yourself in the shower or something.
Yeah, and speaking of time, is to give yourself enough time to sauna. Not that your sauna sessions always have to be 3 hours long or 4 hours or 5 hours long. There can be short ones too. There's a place for that where it's just a quick sauna in the morning or a quick sauna at the end of the gym session. But the sauna that we're describing, where you're having some people over and you're having dinner, it's good to take time and not rush through that process.
Yeah, I think that was all very good advice. I think I would definitely agree with Becca. Like, I think we always tell our guests, relax into the heat and relax into the cold. It is hard, but you're not dying. So just breathe. And then when you come out of that cold plunge, it's amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us today as we shared about how we sauna. Join us next Saturday as we make our first international trip for sauna. If you haven't yet, join our locals community and say hi. It's free to sign up. You'll get regular updates from us. If you enjoy our content and would like to support this podcast, Locals has that option as well. The address is thesaunatrail.locals.com. We appreciate all of our supporters and fellow sauna hounds. Our podcast can be found on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and other streaming platforms, as well as our website, thesaunatrail.com. New episodes release Saturdays, which is the traditional Finnish day for sauna, also called saunapaiva.
We hope to see you on the sauna trail.